What would you do if the person you trusted the most, the one you loved more than anything in this world, decided that your life had no value? What if the person who vowed to be by your side, through thick and thin, was secretly plotting to end it all, to take everything you've worked for, everything you've built, and destroy it in the most unimaginable way? This isn't the story of a stranger, a faceless criminal who came out of nowhere. No, this is the story of a woman who was meant to be the mother of 2 children, a woman you would think was like any other in her small town, a woman who looked, at least from the outside, to be living a normal life. But behind closed doors, things were falling apart. Tracy Richter, once just a name in a quiet town in Iowa, would forever be associated with one of the most chilling and calculated crimes you could ever imagine. What could possibly drive someone to murder a young man, someone entirely innocent, and make it look like self-defense? Why would a mother, someone who is supposed to protect and nurture, go to such extreme lengths to orchestrate a murder that would tear apart everything she held dear? When Tracy Richter pulled the trigger that fateful night, she thought she was securing her future. She thought that by eliminating one person, she could have the life she always dreamed of, the life she felt she was entitled to. But what happened next? The truth was much darker than anything Tracy could have prepared for. In this story, we'll unravel the shocking details of how a woman's desperate desire for control and revenge led her to commit the ultimate crime. We'll take you inside a mind willing to deceive, manipulate, and destroy all in the pursuit of something she could never truly possess. But before we reveal how the dark truth of Tracy's actions came to light, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. This chilling case will leave you questioning how far someone can go when they believe they have nothing left to lose. Dustin Weed was just a 20-year-old man with a future that, by all accounts, should have been filled with possibilities. He was a roofer, working with his hands, living a simple life, and trying to make ends meet like so many others. There wasn't anything particularly extraordinary about Dustin. He wasn't a criminal mastermind, nor was he involved in a violent lifestyle. He was, in many ways, just an average young man, trying to navigate life and make a living. But on December 13, 2001, Dustin's life was tragically cut short, not because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but because he became entangled in a dangerous game orchestrated by someone he would have never suspected. Dustin's background wasn't spotless. He had a criminal record, but his offenses were far from the violent nature of the crime he became connected to. He had been involved in some minor legal issues, but nothing that would have foreshadowed the deadly role he would play in Tracy Richter's plans. It's easy to assume that Dustin's past, his minor run-ins with the law, made him a convenient target for manipulation. But that was not his fault. He wasn't an inherently dangerous person. He had his flaws, yes, but he was simply a man who was trying to get by. And yet, Tracy Richter saw him as a pawn in her twisted plan. Dustin's involvement in Tracy's scheme came not through any malice of his own but as a result of his manipulation by someone much more calculating and deceitful. Tracy had positioned herself as someone he could trust, someone who would offer him a way to earn money. Dustin, like so many others, was caught up in a situation far beyond his control. On that fateful night, he had no idea that he was being lured into a trap that would cost him his life. He walked into what he thought was an ordinary scenario, unaware that his fate had already been sealed. Dustin's tragic death is a reminder of how lives can be turned upside down by the decisions of others, and how easily someone can become entangled in the web of another person's selfish ambitions. His story, now forever tied to a violent crime, wasn't about who he was or where he came from. It was about the role he played in a story much larger than himself. A story where the truth was distorted, and where an innocent man's life was used as a means to an end by someone who cared nothing for his life. Tracy Richter, a woman seemingly just like any other in her small Iowa town, was far from the picture of a devoted mother. On the outside, she appeared to be an ordinary woman, a mother of 2, a divorcee, trying to make a life for herself and her children. But the reality of Tracy's life was anything but normal. Beneath the surface was a woman driven by desperation, a desire for control, and a willingness to do whatever it took to achieve her goals, no matter the cost. Tracy's life had not been easy. She had been married to Dr. John Pittman, a psychiatrist, and the two had 2 children together. But their marriage was anything but ideal. After years of growing tension, the couple divorced, and a bitter custody battle over their children ensued. This battle would become the driving force behind Tracy's actions. For Tracy, the dissolution of her marriage and the ensuing custody dispute seemed like an obstacle she couldn't overcome. Her ex-husband, Dr. Pittman, was in a position of power, with a successful career and an ability to provide the kind of lifestyle that Tracy could not. But what she failed to realize was that her desire for control, her dissatisfaction with her life, and her resentment of her ex-husband would cloud her judgment, leading her to do something that would ultimately destroy everything she held dear. Tracy's motivations were complex. She wanted to regain control of her life, and the only way she saw fit to do that was through extreme measures. The custody battle with her ex-husband weighed heavily on her, and her actions were driven by an overwhelming desire to ensure that she gained full control over her children's future. But it wasn't just about her children, it was about winning. About showing that she could take back what she felt was hers, and that no one would stand in her way. At the time of the murder, Tracy was in a desperate state. Her life was not what she had envisioned. She was stuck in a cycle of emotional turmoil, legal battles, and financial instability. And in her mind, her ex-husband was a barrier to everything she wanted. She resented him for having a better life, for being the one in control. And for Tracy, someone who was used to manipulating situations to her advantage, the idea of using violence as a means to get what she wanted seemed like a logical next step. But what made Tracy's actions even more chilling was the way she manipulated the people around her. She wasn't simply a woman driven to madness by her circumstances. She was a woman who used others to get what she wanted. Dustin Weed, a young man with his own set of issues, was just another pawn in her game. Tracy seduced him into her plot, convincing him to play a part in framing her ex-husband for the crime she planned. Tracy's mindset was rooted in control, entitlement, and a deep-seated frustration with her circumstances. She didn't see herself as a villain, she saw herself as a woman trying to get what was rightfully hers. The fact that she was willing to sacrifice an innocent life to achieve her desires shows just how far she was willing to go. In her mind, Dustin's life had no value. He was merely a tool to help her regain the control she craved. And as for the consequences? They were secondary, a problem to be dealt with later. But what Tracy didn't realize was that in attempting to control her fate, she would lose everything. It was December 13, 2001. When Tracy Richter's deadly plan came to fruition. On this fateful night, she would finally act on the elaborate plot that had been simmering in her mind for months. But for all the careful manipulation, the well-laid plans, and the twisted schemes, Tracy had underestimated one thing. The truth would always have a way of coming to the surface. The plan itself was deceptively simple. Tracy concocted a story, one where she would be the victim, and the hero would emerge as someone she could control. Her ex-husband, Dr. John Pittman, had been the target all along, but Tracy needed a scapegoat, a way to frame him for a crime he did not commit. She needed to make him the villain. And for that, she needed Dustin Weed. The crime was staged to look like a home invasion gone terribly wrong. According to Tracy's story, two men broke into her home, one of them being Dustin, and violently attacked her. She claimed they choked her with pantyhose and threatened her life. In a desperate act of self-defense, she shot and killed Dustin. It was the perfect cover-up in Tracy's mind. If the story held up, no one would ever suspect her of orchestrating the entire thing. But there were cracks in the facade right from the start. The police investigation didn't match Tracy's narrative. For one, there was no sign of forced entry into the house. The supposed home invaders hadn't broken in at all. And then there was the weapon. The gun she claimed had been used to defend herself. The trajectory of the bullet, the lack of struggle in certain areas, and the positioning of the body all suggested a very different story than the one Tracy told. But the most damning evidence would come from an unlikely source, a notebook found in the car of Dustin Weed. In this notebook, police found entries that linked Tracy directly to the crime. The notebook contained details that only someone intimately connected with her would know. It revealed plans that Dustin and another individual had been involved in, details about Dr. Pittman, the custody battle, and Tracy's desire to eliminate her ex-husband. This was the turning point. The evidence had started to tell a different story, one of calculated deceit and manipulation. Tracy's claim of self-defense began to fall apart, piece by piece. Forensic experts contradicted her version of events, and the so-called home invasion began to look like a carefully planned execution, not an accident. The real horror of the crime lay not in the violence itself, but in the chilling way it had been orchestrated. Tracy had not acted in a moment of panic or fear. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. No, Tracy had planned every detail of Dustin's death. She had manipulated him, using him as a pawn in her larger scheme to destroy her ex-husband and take control of her life. The death of Dustin Weed was not an unfortunate consequence of a violent encounter. It was a calculated step in a broader plan to shift the power dynamic in Tracy's favor. She was determined to make everything go according to her design, even if it meant taking an innocent life. The truth has a way of coming to light, no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. For Tracy Richter, the web of lies she had carefully spun began to unravel in a series of unexpected moments, each piece of evidence slowly pulling her deeper into a trap she thought she could escape. The first crack in Tracy's story came when the police began their investigation. She had claimed that Dustin Weed and another man had broken into her home, attacked her, and left her with no choice but to shoot in self-defense. But the forensic evidence didn't support her version of events. There was no sign of forced entry into the home, which raised a crucial question. If this had been a break-in, how had the intruders gained access to the house? The bullet trajectory was another key piece of evidence. According to Tracy's story, she had shot Dustin in a desperate act of self-defense. But the angle of the shot and the positioning of Dustin's body suggested a much different narrative. The police began to suspect that the crime wasn't as spontaneous as Tracy had made it seem. This wasn't an act of self-defense. It was, in all likelihood, a premeditated act of murder. But it wasn't until the discovery of a small, seemingly insignificant item that the full truth began to unfold. In Dustin Weed's car, police found a pink spiral notebook that would serve as the key to unlocking the entire case. This notebook contained a series of entries that detailed a plan involving Tracy, Dustin, and her ex-husband, Dr. John Pittman. The notebook wasn't just a collection of random thoughts. It was a roadmap to a murder plot. It included details about the custody battle between Tracy and Pittman, information about the divorce, and even specific details about Dr. Pittman that were not public knowledge. The notebook made it clear that Dustin Weed had been used as a pawn in Tracy's plan, and the real target all along had been her ex-husband. The entries hinted at a plot to frame Dr. Pittman for the crime, ensuring that he would be seen as the villain and that Tracy would gain full control over her children's future. It became clear that Tracy's motivations were far more complex than a simple case of self-defense gone wrong. This discovery turned the entire investigation on its head. Tracy's story about the home invasion was no longer credible. The evidence pointed directly to her involvement in orchestrating the crime. Her manipulation of Dustin, who had been unaware of the full extent of her plot, became apparent. And with each new piece of evidence, the truth about what had really happened that night began to emerge. As the investigation continued, police found even more inconsistencies in Tracy's story. Her claims of a violent struggle, the supposed attack on her, and the self-defense argument all fell apart under the weight of the evidence. What had started as a tragic case of a woman protecting her children had transformed into a cold, calculated murder. In the end, the truth about the crime was clear. Tracy Richter had staged Dustin Weed's death as part of a larger plan to manipulate the justice system, eliminate her ex-husband, and take control of her life. The web of lies she had built to cover up her crime had finally collapsed, leaving her exposed as the orchestrator of one of the most chilling crimes in Iowa's history. The aftermath of Dustin Weed's death wasn't just a tragedy for his family, it was a devastating blow to everyone connected to the case. The impact reverberated through the small town of Early, Iowa, and left an indelible scar on the lives of all involved. For Tracy Richter, the consequences of her actions were far-reaching, and the repercussions would haunt her forever. Dustin Weed's family was devastated by his loss. A young man with so much potential, taken away before he had a chance to live out the life he had imagined. His parents, his friends, and the people who knew him were left grappling with the shock of his death, but even more so with the realization of how he had been used as a pawn in a deadly plot. The family not only had to mourn the loss of a son, but they also had to come to terms with the fact that his death had been orchestrated by someone they never would have expected, Tracy Richter. The emotional toll on Dustin's family was compounded by the fact that his death was part of a larger scheme to hurt another family. Tracy's manipulation of Dustin, and the fact that he was killed to further her personal vendettas, left his loved ones with a bitter sense of injustice. It wasn't just the loss of life that haunted them, it was the way in which it had been stolen. For Tracy's family, the fallout was equally destructive. She had been a mother, someone who was supposed to protect her children and provide them with a safe and loving home. But instead, Tracy's actions left her children to face the consequences of her choices. The crime not only robbed them of a sense of security but also cast a long shadow over their future. Her ex-husband, Dr. John Pittman, was initially implicated in the crime, accused by Tracy of being involved in the murder. Imagine the shock of finding out that the mother of your children had framed you for something so heinous. For Pittman, the emotional impact was profound. He had to contend with not only the accusations but also the damage to his reputation. His life, like so many others in this case, was irrevocably changed. And then there was Tracy herself. The woman who had once been a mother, a wife, someone who seemed like just another member of the community, now stood convicted of murder. Her children were left to cope with the reality of their mother's actions, knowing that she had taken a life and forever altered their own in the process. The small town of Early, Iowa, was rocked by the crime. In a place where everyone knew everyone else, it was hard to fathom that something so extreme could happen in their midst. Tracy had been a part of the community, someone who was trusted by those around her. Her actions shattered the illusion that evil can't exist in ordinary lives. In a town where trust and reputation mattered, Tracy's crime left everyone questioning what they thought they knew about the people in their lives. The case was a constant topic of conversation, and for many, it became a symbol of how far some people would go to achieve their goals. The entire community was left to reckon with the reality that the person they thought they knew had been capable of such an extreme act of violence and manipulation. The story of Tracy Richter serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how personal motivations and the desire for control can drive someone to commit unimaginable acts. There are several lessons we can take away from this case. Tracy's crime was not one of passion or impulse. It was cold, calculated, and driven by a desire for power. She used the legal system, her family's emotions, and an innocent man's life as tools to achieve her own selfish goals. This case underscores the dangers of manipulating systems. Whether it's the justice system, family dynamics, or the trust of those around us, just to get ahead. Tracy was a master of manipulation. She didn't just orchestrate a murder, she used people as pawns in her twisted game. From Dustin Weed to her ex-husband, everyone involved was either directly or indirectly manipulated by her. This case highlights the psychological toll that manipulation can take on others. It also serves as a reminder of how damaging it can be to deceive and control those who trust you. At its core, this case was about a custody battle, something that, on the surface, might seem like a family issue. But the desperation to win at any cost, especially when children's futures are involved, can cloud judgment and lead to catastrophic outcomes. Tracy's desperate need to regain control of her children's lives led her to a point where she was willing to sacrifice an innocent life. This case serves as a stark reminder of how high the stakes can be when emotions and personal grievances take over. In this case, forensic evidence played a pivotal role in uncovering the truth. The inconsistencies in Tracy's story, the forensic analysis of the crime scene, and the discovery of the notebook in Dustin's car were all key to unraveling the truth. This case highlights the importance of forensic work in ensuring that justice is served. Even when someone tries to manipulate the facts, the truth can still come to light if the evidence is thorough and properly examined. Now that you've heard the shocking details of Tracy Richter's deadly plot, I want to know what you think. Could you ever imagine someone you trust being capable of such a cold, calculated crime? How far do you think someone would go to get control over their life and secure the future they want? Could Dustin Weed have seen what was coming, or was he just a victim of someone else's manipulation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think justice was truly served in this case? How do you feel about the sentence Tracy received and the emotional toll it has left on all the families involved? If this story left you questioning how far someone can go when driven by desperation, don't forget to hit the like button. Share your thoughts with us, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more chilling true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an unsettling case like this one. The truth is often darker than we can imagine. Stay tuned for our next story, where we'll bring you another shocking case that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people around you.